All right, welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, it's fascinating. We're diving into how to best equip our future teachers with the skills and the confidence to teach reading effectively.
Right.
We've got this really insightful review article by Haverback and Perot. It's called Pre-Service Reading Teacher Efficacy and Tutoring, a review.
It was a good one.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of break this down and understand just what the research says about how tutoring impacts, these teachers before they actually get into the classroom.
Yeah.
Now, why should anyone listening care about this? Well, whether you're a teacher yourself, a parent, or just someone who values education, this deep dive is going to offer some really insightful strategies potentially for improving how we prep our teachers and ultimately, affecting student learning.
Right.
Plus, we're going to uncover some really interesting, maybe even surprising differences in how new teachers and those seasoned veterans, see their own capabilities. So let's kick things off. There's this term, teacher efficacy, and it pops up a lot in education research.
Yeah.
Can you break down what that actually means in simple terms and why is it so important?
Yeah, definitely. So you can think of teacher efficacy as this belief that a teacher has in their ability to effectively teach and motivate their students.
Mm-hmm.
Like your inner confidence, that they can really make a difference in their classroom.
Right, right.
And what Haverback and Pearl's review really highlights is this strong indication, actually supported by pre-service teachers themselves, that focused tutoring in reading can act as a crucial bridge to building this belief.
Okay.
Maybe even more so than just those general field experiences.
Interesting.
And, the research is pretty consistent in showing that when teachers have that high efficacy, well, good things happen in the classroom.
So, what kind of good things are we talking about here?
So first off, these teachers tend to create much more positive and supportive learning environments.
Mm-hmm.
Their students, they're more likely to achieve, greater academic success. It's almost like that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So it's not just knowing the material, it's believing that you can get those kids to actually learn it, connect with them.
Exactly. Exactly. And teachers with that high efficacy, they're also they're more innovative in their teaching.
Oh, interesting.
They're more open to trying new approaches, especially those techniques focused on mastery learning, where the students need to show they've grasped a concept before moving on.
So it's like ensuring they've got, say, basic phonics down before you move on to more complex reading skills.
Yeah, exactly. And they tend to be more proactive in their classroom management, too.
So basically, a teacher who believes in themselves is more likely to adapt and to try new things to really reach their students, which, makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Now, what about students with, more diverse needs, like those who might be in special education?
Yeah.
Does teacher efficacy play a role there, too?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
The research actually indicates that teachers who have that strong sense of self-efficacy, they're more willing, they feel better equipped to work with special ed students.
Mm-hmm.
And what's fascinating is they actually tend to have lower referral rates to special ed services.
Really?
Yeah, so, it suggests that they believe they can handle, a wider range of learning differences right there in their own classroom.
That's a huge point, right? If they feel capable, they're more likely to take on that challenge, handle a broader spectrum of student needs.
Right.
And I'd imagine that feeling of competence probably impacts the teachers themselves as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. There's there's a really strong connection that researchers have found between teacher efficacy and job satisfaction.
Makes sense.
Right. So teachers who believe they're making a real difference, they're happier in their jobs, and they experience less burnout.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially given the challenges of teaching. Anything that helps with job satisfaction is worth looking into.
Absolutely. So it seems like high efficacy is this win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I'm curious about something else from the review. It talks about how pre-service teachers, so those who are still in training,
Right.
view their efficacy compared to, those teachers who are already in the trenches, the in-service teachers. What did the research show there?
This is a really fascinating part. So pre-service teachers, they often have a totally different perspective on their capabilities than those seasoned teachers.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, novice teachers tend to report lower efficacy in areas like managing a classroom and just general instructional techniques, which,
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
right, you learn so much in those first few years. It's the difference between knowing the theory and navigating a real classroom.
Exactly.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Haverback and Perot, they found that pre-service teachers might actually report higher efficacy in some areas,
Okay, like what?
like overcoming negative influences on a student's life or motivating students, stuff like that.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah, and the authors, they suggest it might be, because of that lack of experience, right? Pre-service teachers might hold these more idealistic views based on what they've studied without fully grasping the complexities and the persistent nature of some of these challenges.
Right. So they haven't had to face like the day-to-day realities of, trying to motivate a student who's dealing with a difficult home life.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so then it begs the question,
Yeah.
does this, this confidence, this high level of confidence before they've actually been in the classroom, does it really translate into effective teaching?
That's the million-dollar question. While, that enthusiasm and that belief in their potential are definitely important. It's
Right.
got to be built on practical skills and that ability to adapt to, the unpredictable nature of a real classroom.
And this is where those real-world experiences, those mastery experiences come in, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. The idea is that by actively engaging in real teaching situations, pre-service teachers can start to build that more grounded understanding of what they're actually capable of.
Mm-hmm.
It helps them move past just theoretical knowledge and into that realm of practical competence.
Right. It gives them that hands-on, okay, this is what it actually looks like experience.
Exactly.
But it sounds like the research on whether or not these field experiences always result in a boost in efficacy is a bit iffy, a bit mixed.
Yeah, you're right. Some studies show a clear boost after, things like student teaching,
Mm-hmm.
but others, well, they paint a more complicated picture.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure, yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
a number of studies show that pre-service teachers, they report this increased confidence after they've completed their student teaching,
Oh.
which, aligns with that whole idea that, successfully navigating those experiences, it builds their self-belief.
Yeah.
There's even one study that found that a field trip, specifically designed to help them engage with diverse learners, it actually positively impacted their confidence in working with that population.
It seems like those targeted approaches, those focused experiences are key here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It's not just a general, go observe a classroom. It's let's give them a specific experience that targets a specific area.
Okay, but you mentioned a more complicated picture. What about the flip side of that?
So some of the research, it didn't find any significant difference in efficacy between, say, pre-service teachers who had student teaching or mentoring and those who didn't. It's important to keep in mind, though, that some of these studies may have measured just general teaching efficacy instead of focusing on particular subjects.
Okay, so a general mentoring experience might not actually translate to confidence in teaching, say, reading specifically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there are these more surprising findings. There's one study where pre-service teachers actually reported a loss of confidence in teaching science.
What, really? After student teaching?
Yeah, after their student teaching. It seems counterintuitive, right?
It does.
The authors suggest that maybe the reality of the classroom, the demands of the curriculum, the diverse needs of the students, maybe even limited resources, that it all led to, well, a less optimistic view of their ability to teach science.
So it's like those rose-colored glasses came off and they were faced with the reality of the situation.
Exactly. So field experiences, they're not a guaranteed confidence booster, and in some cases, they might actually lead to a dip in self-belief.
Yeah.
Which brings us to tutoring, a very specific type of mastery experience.
Okay, so what makes tutoring potentially more impactful than these broader field experiences?
Well, tutoring, especially when it's that one-on-one work with a student, it provides this really concentrated and direct mastery experience. It gives those pre-service teachers a chance to immediately apply what they're learning in their university courses, those theories and things. They can assess a student's needs, try out different strategies, and see immediate results.
It's a much more immediate feedback loop, right, than, say, just observing a classroom.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And Haberback and Perot really emphasize that while field experiences have been widely studied, there's not enough research specifically looking at the connection between tutoring and reading and efficacy in teaching reading for pre-service teachers.
So we need more research that zeroes in on these specific subject areas.
Yeah, exactly. But, the research we do have,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't, directly measure reading efficacy, it really suggests that pre-service teachers, they find tutoring incredibly valuable.
Oh, okay.
They believe it helps prepare them to teach reading well.
Didn't some studies even find that pre-service teachers rated tutoring as like the most important factor in shaping their beliefs about how to teach reading?
Absolutely. Several studies highlighted that
Oh,
those who hadn't had tutoring, they often said they wished they had, that they wanted that kind of hands-on experience.
right, to test out those strategies and see what
Oh,
works.
that,
Now, what about the amount of time that's dedicated to classroom prep? Especially prep that's focused on reading instruction. Does that play a role too?
it definitely seems to. Research suggests that teacher education programs that give more time for those focused, reading-centered field experiences, they tend to produce first-year teachers who are just better equipped, more prepared to understand and to implement good reading instruction.
That makes sense. The more time they spend really digging into those methods and practicing, the more comfortable they'll be when they're actually in front of a classroom.
Exactly.
So tutoring doesn't just potentially boost confidence,
Right.
but it seems to also really enhance their actual knowledge of how to teach reading effectively. So let's talk about that a little bit more. How does reading tutoring, how does it impact like the knowledge base of a pre-service teacher?
Well, one key change that researchers have observed is it's a shift in how they view the whole approach to teaching reading.
Okay.
The experience of tutoring often helps them move from a more teacher-centered approach.
Right, where it's all about the teacher delivering information.
Exactly, to a more student-centered approach,
Yeah.
where it's all about meeting the individual needs of each student.
Which, I mean, when you're working one-on-one, you're almost forced to do that, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And the review, it highlights findings that tutoring helps pre-service teachers gain confidence, not just in, teaching reading in general, but also in understanding why some students struggle.
Mm-hmm.
They start to see the complexity of the reading process and all the factors that can affect a student's progress.
So it's not just here's how you teach reading. It's here's how you teach reading, and here's how you understand the different challenges that kids might be facing.
Right, right.
You also mentioned something about a program that took inspiration from reading recovery, which had some interesting results.
Oh, yeah. So Reading Recovery, it's this program that involves really intensive one-on-one tutoring.
Okay.
And a study looked at pre-service teachers who were in a program that incorporated some of those elements, like the close observation of experienced teachers.
Mm.
And they found that those future teachers became more willing to take on that responsibility of helping struggling readers.
That's interesting.
Right. It went from, this is someone else's job to, no, this is part of my role as a teacher.
And I remember reading about the use of email reflections from the pre-service tutors,
Yes.
which seemed to provide some really interesting insights.
Those were really valuable. So research using those email reflections showed that tutoring helped pre-service teachers become more reflective about their teaching.
Okay.
They could think more critically about their decisions, they were more aware of student needs, and they actually learned to adapt their lessons based on those individual needs.
So it's like they were constantly analyzing, okay, how did this go? What could I have done differently? How do I need to adjust for this particular student?
Exactly, exactly. They also often reflected on their connection with the students,
Yeah.
which emphasizes that human side of teaching.
It's a powerful reminder that it's not just about delivering content, it's about building those relationships.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And beyond the teaching methods, tutoring also seems to have a positive impact on their knowledge of language and literacy, the content itself.
Okay.
Studies have shown that their understanding of language structure and their ability to analyze how students respond to literature, it improves significantly after tutoring.
So they're not just learning how to teach, but they're also deepening their own understanding of the subject matter.
Right, exactly. It's like that real-world interaction with students gives them context for what they're learning in their courses.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So it seems pretty clear that reading tutoring can be a really powerful tool in preparing these future teachers. But, the review also points out some limitations in the research, right?
Of course.
So what are some of the challenges and where do we need more research?
One of the big ones that Haverback and Perot point out is that we don't have, really specific and reliable ways to measure pre-service teacher efficacy in reading specifically.
Okay.
Most of the scales we have, they look at general teaching efficacy,
Mm.
not how confident a teacher feels about teaching, phonics or fluency or comprehension, the specific skills involved in reading.
Right, because someone could be super confident about classroom management,
Yeah.
but feel totally lost when it comes to actually teaching kids how to decode words, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. So we need better tools to really gauge how pre-service teachers feel about teaching those individual components of reading.
So more specialized measurement is key.
Absolutely. Another challenge is, it's hard to do really rigorous studies in education.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to have those really strong control groups.
Right, like a group of pre-service teachers who are taking the same courses but aren't doing the tutoring for comparison.
Exactly.
So we need more robust research designs to really isolate the impact of the tutoring itself.
Yeah, we need to be able to confidently say this change is because of the tutoring, not some other factor.
Absolutely. And what other directions for future research did the author suggest?
Well, they call for more research that directly investigates whether tutoring actually leads to an increase in pre-service teacher efficacy
Hmm.
in reading, using those more specific measures we were just talking about.
Right, to really nail down that connection.
Exactly. They also raise a really interesting question about the nature of that relationship.
Okay.
Is it always better for pre-service teachers to have like super high efficacy, or could a more realistic, maybe even slightly lower sense of efficacy, one that's based on experience, be more beneficial in the long run?
That ask is interesting. It's like maybe a bit of a reality check, even if it tempers their initial enthusiasm, might actually lead to more effective teaching down the road.
Right, because they're going in with a clearer understanding of the challenges.
Mm-hmm. And they're maybe not setting themselves up for disappointment.
Exactly, exactly. And they also suggest that future research should look into, which specific parts of the tutoring experience are most effective.
Okay.
Is it the one-on-one interaction, the lesson planning, the constant need to adjust? What's really making the difference?
So really breaking down the tutoring process to understand the mechanisms at play.
Exactly,
That
exactly.
makes sense. And they briefly touched on the dual benefits of tutoring, not just for the pre-service teachers, but for the elementary students they're working with too, right?
Yes, that's another area ripe for more research.
Because ultimately, it's all about helping those kids learn to read effectively.
Absolutely.
So, to bring it all back, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from all this research on pre-service reading teacher efficacy and tutoring?
I think the key takeaway is that while field experiences in general are important, tutoring, especially in reading, it's really powerful. It not only helps them develop practical knowledge, but it also helps them develop a stronger, more grounded sense of confidence in their ability to teach reading.
It's that combination of theory and practice, right?
Exactly.
They're not just learning about it, they're actually doing it.
Right. And that hands-on experience, that's crucial.
So given these findings, it makes you think, how can we improve teacher education programs? Should we make these intensive tutoring experiences in specific subjects, like reading, a more central part of the training?
Right.
And how can we better measure that specific confidence that pre-service teachers have in teaching different subjects?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about giving them the tools and the experiences they need to be successful.
And maybe, as you're listening to this, you're thinking about your own experiences with learning and teaching and how those experiences might have shaped your own sense of efficacy or your approach to helping others learn.
Absolutely. It's worth reflecting on.
It really is. It all comes back to understanding how we can best prepare these future educators to empower the next generation of readers.
Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this deep dive. This has been really enlightening.
It's been my pleasure.
And for everyone listening, keep those wheels turning and keep exploring these ideas.
Yeah. Keep diving deep.
All right, we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you then.
Bye.